So is there a way to train the mind to have more attention and focus?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think there was. So most of my career, and I started studying attention when I was an undergrad at your favorite place, University of Michigan.
That school up north?
Yeah. So I started very early on, and for most of my early career, I was just interested in how it works. How do you make it work? How does it work in the brain? What are the various neural components of it? Then what I started noticing, like early on when I was had my own lab, is, we know a lot about what makes it fail. So we know it's quite powerful, but it's also vulnerable. And the kinds of things that it's vulnerable to, the top three that we kept seeing are stress, threat, and poor mood.
Stress, threat, and poor mood.
Yes. Okay. So, and if you think about where your mind goes, often, it's that kind of terrain. It could be when it's not intentional, like you're not trying to plan for some big event. It defaults to these states, like you were saying before, rumination, catastrophizing. And knowing that attention is powerful but vulnerable, I became extremely interested in figuring out how do we train it? Like there must be a way we can train it. Neuroplasticity and the growth of new neurons, even in the adult brain, was something that was coming out. We've known about neuroplasticity for a very long time, but the notion that you could train you could train the brain to be better, was new.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I kind of took it upon myself as a mission to figure out how can we do this. So we tried lots of things. We tried positive psychology. We tried these high-tech light and sound devices, like you were talking about before, this brain gym, some ways we could play computer games that none of it was reliably working. We're still getting this kind of consistent vulnerability to distraction that would occur. And then I did something that I never thought I would do. I was actually probably the world's biggest skeptic regarding this.
Meditation.
We tried mindfulness meditation.
Why do all roads lead back to meditation?
Isn't that funny? But at this time, remember, this is like the early 2000s. It was not a thing. I never would think in a million years at that moment, I'd be talking to somebody on a very popular platform that knows about this term. It was this very odd thing. I remember the first time one of my senior colleagues mentioned it. It was in the context of this big lecture. And he basically showed this brain image of a brain that he had induced in his lab to be in a positive mood. And then one that was
positive psychology, you mean?
No, but
think positive thoughts, or?
He did that, but it was really basically get in a scanner and think about happy memories, listen to happy music, just in the state of positivity.
An environment of positivity.
For just the period of time that they were getting the brain image. Then he did the same thing for the negative brain. And at the end of his lecture, I said, how do I get that negative brain to look like that positive brain? Just sort of because I was frankly having my own life circumstances around that.
Sure.
And he, I'm at the back of the room and and it's the end of the lecture and he's like, meditation. And I was like, what? To me, it was
What year is this?
This was 2003.
Wow.
To me, it was as offensive as somebody talking to a group of astrophysicists and talking about astrology as if it was a serious topic.
Right.
It's just I'm sorry, we're at the University of Pennsylvania here. We don't use those terms.
Right. We're not some woo-woo university.
But of course I respected him dearly and had a chance to talk to him afterwards. And he was telling me about the work they were doing with adept monks. This was Richie Davidson, who now of course leads a very enterprising center in Wisconsin to study meditation. But back then it was not known at all. But it got me super curious, what? And, I'm an Indian woman, so meditation is not something really new to me. I mean, I'd known about it, but I always thought it's a great thing for my parents to do.
Right.
I'm not interested. I'm a serious scientist. Yeah. I'll wait, I'll wait to see what the science has to say about any of that. But his use of that term made me at least want to explore it personally to begin with, because I happened to be having my own. The reason I asked about how to get the negative thing to the positive brain, because at that moment in my life, I felt like I was probably more like that brain.
The negative brain.
The negative
brain. You were stressed, you were overwhelmed.
Stressed, overwhelmed, new baby.
Personal stuff, yeah.
Well, it was actually, I'd lost feeling in my teeth from grinding. I mean, it was not minor
You were
anymore.
A lot of stress. You were grinding all night, all day. You were
It was bad. And I'm
wow.
I gotta shake this. And the worst part wasn't so much the physical pain. I had no idea what was going on physically. But I was really feeling that I wasn't paying attention to my life, and it bugged me. I mean, I was literally developing expertise. My lab was devoted to attention, and I could not.
You couldn't focus. That's all you did, though. And you couldn't focus.
I couldn't keep my head in the game.
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
And so when he said that, I was like, well, I'm going to check it out. So I go literally to the Penn bookstore and buy a book. I lucked out because I could have picked any random book. I picked a book called Mindfulness, what was called Meditation for Beginners by a very dear teacher of mine, Jack Kornfield. And it was a tiny little book. It came with its own guided CD, and I was like, I'll check it out. Fine, my respected colleague says this is something. So I start doing this. And
Jack Kornfield or Jack Canfield?
Jack Kornfield.
Kornfield, okay, because there's a Jack Canfield as well.
Oh, yeah, no, this is Jack Kornfield, a longtime meditation teacher, really one of the people responsible for bringing mindfulness to the West. So I lucked out that I picked that book.
Okay. It had DVD or CD, so you're listening to it.
So I listened to it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, all the instruction in this meditation thing, it's just all about attention. Pay attention to your breath.
Your thought.
Notice your mind wandering. Return it. I mean, it was such a simple yet elegant instruction. And what struck me is he is providing instruction of something that's been around for 2,500 years, but it's tapping into the exact brain system I happen to study in my lab. And after a few weeks, probably about a month and a half or so of doing this, I was like feeling completely transformed.
Really?
Which was so bizarre to me. Like I almost didn't believe that this was happening, but I could look at my spouse, I could be with my child, I could be more engaged in the lab, and the pressures and the strain hadn't changed at all externally, but I was a different person.
Wow, but your response to the pressure had shifted.
Exactly.
You were just showing up differently to the stress.
Correct.
To the emotional or psychological threats and the poor mood.
That's right.
The stress, the threats, and the poor mood.
Yes.
Because you had all three of them, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it was hard for you to shake it. You were trying to do what before? What were you trying to do to shift those three things?
I mean, anything I could think of.
Positive thinking,
right?
or...
Yeah, look on the bright side, that failed epically. We even brought that to the lab, and for people that were in high stress, it doesn't seem to work if you're experiencing high stress.
Look on the bright side, meaning like have perspective?
No.
Okay.
Induce a positive mood into your life by manufacturing that.
How do you do that?
Name 3 happy memories you've had. And there are different levels of this. For example, gratitude or compassion. These are positive types of orientations where you affiliate toward the experience in that way. But this was more basic than that. This was listen to a happy song. And it works maybe temporarily, at least if you're under a lot of stress. But it doesn't transform essentially your ability to be focused, your attention.
What is having, let's say you're just having a breakdown in your day. Something happens, you have a breakdown. What does the principle of perspective with that breakdown? I don't know. I got a cold today, but at least I don't have, I still have a blessed life. I still live in Los Angeles, and, there's a lot worse sick people off than me, and I'm a healthy human being, and this is just a week of a cold or something. What does perspective coupled with gratitude do for a peak peace mind?
I mean, I think that for a cold in a healthy, stable environment where you feel basically taken care of, it can be very helpful.
Right.
But now you're in the middle of a war zone, and when your best bud's just lost his arm, it's very hard to see the silver lining there. And unfortunately, when people start trying to do that, they are depleting their attentional resources. We cannot reframe a situation. We cannot even garner that kind of perspective when attentional resources are limited. Because this thing called attention, I mean, I'm kind of shorthanding it, and all I'm telling you is the term, but it ends up being the fuel for our success, and the fuel in particular for our ability to think, feel, and connect. So if you don't, attention. So if you don't have this, you're basically depleted because of the demands in your life, and now you try to basically press the gas pedal because you're like, I got to create a positive reality here. I got to look on the bright side. I got to have gratitude for everything good in my life. Nothing's going to come up, and you're going to end up spending out more fuel than is useful to you.
Interesting.
So what we need is a solution, especially in those kind of moments.
So in a chaotic moment,
Not just chaotic, but demanding and long-term.
Give me a few examples. You're going through a divorce.
You're going through a divorce. You're a lawyer and you're preparing for a big case.
Okay.
You're an accountant in tax season. You're a mom that just had a baby.
Right.
I mean, the list of things in our lives which are protracted and demanding and somewhat stressful, there's many.
Your next 6 to 12 months is going to be a journey. It's
Yeah,
going to be
and frankly,
stressful.
I never expected this, but we'd been studying this for many, many years, and then COVID hit, and the whole world
Now
is in
everyone's
this.
experiencing it, yes.
Everyone is in this experience, and the description, and a lot of my war colleagues use this. It was actually a term developed at the U.S. Army War College, VUCA. Maybe it's a term you're familiar with.
VUCA.
V for volatile, U uncertain, C complex, and A ambiguous. So when the circumstances have those qualities, you're going to be your attention is going to be fully engaged and required, and it's going to actually probably get depleted more quickly.
Your attention will be depleted if it has those things.
Right.
And if you're under stress and threat and poor mood, you're like, you can't focus on anything.
That's right. But the worst part is that if now that system of attention, those are the factors that make it depleted. Now
Those four factors make it depleted, or the three?
Well, the same thing. Those are the circumstances.
Stress, threat, poor mood.
Those circumstances, VUCA, creates a lot of stress, threat, and poor mood.
Yes.
So those are the circumstances, and the qualities of mind that appear are stress, threat, poor mood. You're such a good student.
Trying to learn this stuff.
Well, the result ends up being that attention is depleted. And, you might say, well, that's not great. I mean, I probably won't be able to read a book or something. It's not great, but attention is way more than focusing for cognitive functioning. Like I said, we need our attention not only to think, we need it to actually feel and regulate our mood.
Attention. Because if we can't have attention, if we don't have the energy to have focused attention, then our mood will just continue to be stressful. And we'll continue to react in negative ways, is what I'm hearing you say, in life situations.
Well, maybe it would be helpful, if you're up for it, to break down what I even mean by the term attention.
Give it to me, yes. What is attention?
So attention, like I said, it's complex, multifaceted. It literally is fuel for everything else we do. And from the brain science point of view, we've basically parsed it into three main subsystems. So one, we've already been talking about it. It's focus. It's this ability, formally it's called the orienting system of attention, but the metaphor I like to use, which is essentially focus, is a flashlight. So if you're in a darkened room, wherever you direct that flashlight, you're going to get privileged access to that information, crisp and clear wherever it's pointing. Everything else is dark. Attention, in terms of this focusing aspect, is just the same. So right now, even as I'm looking at you and paying attention to what you're saying to me, everything else is a little bit fuzzed out. So the cool thing about that is that it can be, there's basically a couple things. So it can be directed. That's awesome. We can decide what to pay attention to. I'm now looking at you instead of, over there, which would be annoying. And it's not just to the external environment. We can pay attention internally. So if I say right now, what are the sensations on the bottoms of your feet right now?
I just feel sock and
Exactly.
a little bit of pressure from my shoe.
But I bet you, before I said that, that was not on your mind at all, right? So you could internally take that flashlight, direct it toward bodily sensations, and you can get access. So it goes back to that broader view of what attention does. It solves a big problem that the brain has, which is it can't take in everything in every moment, all of it. So it's subsampling.
Yes.
But it's not just bodily sensations, it's emotions, it's trains of thought, it's our connection to other people. All of that we can direct the flashlight to. We can direct it toward other people, like I am right now and you are. We can direct it toward an idea we have and we want to pursue it. We can actually direct it toward an emotional experience to deepen our sense of it and kind of bathe in that. It could be something tender or anger. And we can regulate. We can say, you know what? Right now it's probably not a good idea for me to break down crying.
Right.
So anyway, that's just one system. Focusing, right?
Number two is?
The second system is the exact opposite. It's not about focusing. It's about being broad and receptive. And this I call the floodlight. It's called the alerting system. So its job is to essentially keep our resources, our mind's attentional resources, ready for whatever may occur next so we can act. So whereas the first system was about selecting based on what, this is about, this floodlight is about time. We want to pay attention to now. What's going on right now? And like if you're driving down the street and you see a flashing yellow light, like near a construction site or something, you're more vigilant. You're just alert. You don't know what it's going to be. Is somebody going to walk into the street but it's available to you in a broad and receptive manner. So
you're not focused on one point. You're scanning. More.
You're scanning. You're broad, and you're not going to assume you know what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. That's why we're going to be alert to whatever occurs. So does that make sense of how it's literally the polar opposite?
Yes.
And then the third system is called executive control. And this is a term the term executive is pretty much like the executive of a company. The executive's job is to ensure that our goals, the organization's goals, for example, and behavior align. It's like goals and action need to align moment by moment. And the metaphor I use for this is a juggler. So a juggler's job is to make sure all the balls are in the air. The executive of a company doesn't go in and do every individual task. That would be a bad executive, right? But it is to oversee, to make sure we're supposed to be doing this, we're not, get back on track, that kind of an orientation.
Yeah.
So very different, right? That's not really about focusing or even being broad. It's about the management. So now you see why when we think about attention in this kind of three system point of view, it does feed into almost every single thing we do, thinking, feeling, connecting. Essentially, as we are experiencing things, we're encoding it, we're getting it into our memory. And then the way it turns from just experience to a hardened neural representation is we have a replay mechanism. It just kind of goes over and over again. Anything that's the slop, the things that vary from replay